Alright, so this is my night build right now. It's kind of been my night build for a while. I started playing this a long time ago back at level 40 because I thought this node was really cool. I still think this node is really cool. And I was originally playing it on I was originally doing it on Kavir to get those lightning strikes from my crits instead of ancestral strikes because that seemed way easier to do. I didn't realize how easy it was to get ancestral strike chance back then, especially on the night, so that's what I was doing. But this Reaper is actually really cool, and basically what this build does is you're just going to stack a ton of different damage multipliers, and none of your base damage is going to be that crazy, but it's going to end up doing a ton of damage. Where do we start? In theory, you can actually use almost any Reaper for this, but I've found this one to be really consistent, but I've leveled all my Reapers to at least level 20 on Wrath 8 using this build and just swapping out the Reaper, and like it's viable. The main reason to use this is I guess you get your Reaper damage into elemental damage for free, but you don't even need that. It's really strong without that even. If you have another Reaper that you see some cool synergy with, obviously, it's your character, do whatever you want. But I'm using the Ancestral Legacy, the Primordial version. For the way I'm playing this build, I have found that the Malediction doesn't really matter. All my damage is elemental damage. You can see I only have 745 skill damage anyway, so like everything is based around Whirlwind, and it's even if I didn't have the Malediction, I'm not going to be dealing any damage from it. So I find it's not that big of a deal, and for the 2 extra crystal shards every shot gives you more damage and more crits, and as a result, more ancestral strikes. And as we'll see, we really don't want to be doing ancestral strikes all the time. So this is the Reaper I've been using at full affinity with full Gron, so this is the strongest it's ever going to get. This is the Reaper. This is a Whirlwind build, so you're going to be holding down that Whirlwind button all the time. And the reason is because Whirlwind hits all the time. It hits really often. So let's go through the skills. We really don't need anything here. If you want to spend extra mana, you can turn this on. But none of these really matter. We're not going to have interfires. We're not going to do damage with our Whirlwind, so this doesn't matter. We're not going to do damage with our Whirlwind, so this doesn't matter. So if you really like having these lit up, you can turn this one on because it's free mana. Here, I'm just getting the crit strike block chance. I might change this to be melee recast chance, because I'm a lot tankier now than I used to be prior to this update. I might even switch to this, but I've been using the crit damage into block stacks. My block is basically at 100 all the time, which is nice to have. It's free damage reduction that only the knight gets, so you may as well take advantage of it. But if you find you don't need it, you can always get extra damage instances. This is kind of personal choice. I find I don't need the tenacity that much because we have our jump, which we'll come back to later. So I take the elemental damage, 10% chance. You're going to see these a lot more than you think you will. These happen all the time. They're all over the place. They do a bunch of elemental damage. Or I mean, they do a decent amount. Not a billion, right? But like I said, this build is all about making these smaller numbers do a whole lot of damage. So I take this. I take this one as well. We're not going to be dealing Whirlwind damage. We're not going to be really having any raw or Reaper damage. This just makes us deal more damage which we're not dealing and lose damage reduction. So I took Arcane Beams. You can turn this one on if you want. It doesn't really matter. You don't really need this. It just limits your movement, and we already have a pole with the jump, and we're not doing any damage with our Whirlwind, so we don't do that. So you can turn this on, you can turn it off. It doesn't really make a difference. For my secondary, I'm just leveling Throwing Sword. I had this on just for the block stacks and stuff, but you're going to get a billion really fast anyway. I don't really have a secondary that I need or care about, so I'm just leveling Throwing Sword. It's my only knight skill that I haven't leveled up yet, so it doesn't really matter. You can put whatever you want there. If you want to grappling hook people, that's probably a good way to play, but it doesn't really matter. And then this is a lot of builds. The Specialization doesn't really matter that much, but this is a really nice one for this build. This is bugged, that lets you go above 5 levels right now, but this should only be like a 5% reduction or something, or 2.5% for each enemy hit. It's still good. Neither of these really do anything for us, so I would still put this on for a little bit of cooldown reduction on your jump. Block chance is lucky. We're going to be at 100 block stacks all the time, but you know, it's still nice in case we're not and we get hit by something big. This doesn't really matter for us. I guess you could stun enemies if you want, if you find you don't care about the block, but I keep block chances lucky on. We don't care about inner fires, we don't care about astral retribution, but this pole, when we land, is really, really nice. You can get enemies all grouped up, hit a bunch of enemies at a time, hit a bunch of ancestral strikes, and that's the game. That's what we want to do. We don't need crest shields. We just want our luck to be popping off. This is going to help us get these all the time, right? We're increasing our luck every time we cast a skill, which is really, really often because we're roll-ending. So we're going to get these perfect rolls way more often. So I would keep this on. We don't need whirlwind strike. So ancestral strike chance is lucky. We are ancestral striking this build. That's where all of our everything comes from. And all, yeah, that's where it is. So ancestral strike chance we want lucky. This really doesn't matter. I guess in theory we should have this one on, actually, removing our negative effects. It's actually what I thought I had on. So in case you're, you know, getting the elemental damage on you, or you're getting slowed, you can leap out of it and you are chilling and you lose all those negative effects. It used to reset this one as well, but not anymore. And then this is just extra damage. Ideally, you can just nuke people before the decreased damage under 25% life gets kicked in. Ideally, you just skip that, but sometimes you'll be doing less damage, especially to elites and like the siege leader and stuff in the forge. But this is good for the most part. And then this as well, to get those perfect skill casts more often, you have a chance to keep your luck at its level. So what'll happen is you'll get to perfect, and every once in a while you'll see like 8 of these pop off because it'll just keep rolling, and you'll just be shooting arcane beams all over the place. And this adds up really fast. So as far as skills go, that's basically what we're doing for skills. That really doesn't tell us. You're probably like, oh, okay, but what's the damage? You know, we see this one, it's got decent Reaper damage on it. It's going to give us lots of ancestral strikes, and it's going to give us extra elemental damage based on our ancestral strikes. But like, what are we doing with that? We're not doing any whirlwind damage. There's no way that these are doing everything, right? Well, the real answer is lightning rods. This is a hidden OP ancestral skill. For some reason, it doesn't have a good tooltip. Every other ancestral skills, like, here you get this ability and it does exactly what it says it does. You know, we're going to be getting ancestral strikes for extra elemental damage. We're going to be calling down the lightning rods, right? Or the lightning strikes, but what does this do? But if you hover over it, it actually pops up here for some reason. It drops a lightning rod, and the lightning rod does 100% elemental damage to enemies hit. And it does it really, 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 really often. Like, probably about as often as whirlwind hits. So that's going to add up really fast, and you'll get a lot of them. So you're going to be doing the damage very often, and you're going to have like 100 of these. And that's like a 100x multiplier on your elemental damage, basically. It's a hidden OP move. As far as gear goes, we're basically just trying to get as much crit strike and ancestral strike damage as possible, as well as like flat elemental damage. We don't really need percentage because we get 175% from our Reaper plus another 52% multiplier that's always going to be up. So you really don't need percent elemental damage that much. Like, I probably have none. Where's the thing? Yeah, it's like just from my Reaper. You don't need raw damage at all. You don't need anything else. So you need crit strike chance, ancestral strike chance, and then you're also going to be rolling evasion onto basically everything you can get, because we're using the Indomitable Mountain for a whole bunch of armor. other legendaries that matter, some extra damage is okay. This one doesn't matter that much. This one really doesn't matter. This is a really strong legendary if you ever get really, really low. But we're not going to be getting low that often. You'll see. Inextricable Torment also very strong. Some of these more defensive ones I might change. I might even change my ultimatum because there is a new defensive ability that makes everything else irrelevant, in my opinion. Like, I might just put this on movement speed, so I'm zipping around. And not and so where we're getting all of our defense is this rune. 2000 shield doesn't sound like that much, but this stacks. Which is why we're getting a whole bunch of armor and stuff. So this stacks. It's also going to get buffed by our effect rune, and we're triggering it with ancestral strikes, which we're doing all the time. And we only need 4. So we're going to trigger this like every whirlwind rotation and just get a ton of shields. Once this enhancement rune is maxed out, we'll be getting more than our max health in shield like every second. So usually in Forge runs by like wave 15, I have like 3 million shields, and then what I'll do is I'll swap this out for the crit strike damage and crit strike chance one for some extra damage, and then once my shield drops down to like 60,000, I'll put the shield back on, and they probably need to make it so that the shields go away when you take it off, because it's really OP. That you can just like build up a bunch of shields and then walk around with a billion shields. And that's pretty much the build. Oh, I should go over talents as well. We want to turn our armor into elemental resistance, right? So we're basically, you can roll some percent armor, percent LE resist as well. But mostly you want evasion, because that's gonna cascade down to everything else. But basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn armor into elemental resistance. I just got this for the Reaper damage multiple. This is too high. No, this is giving us evasion. That's why it's up there. Get a little bit extra evasion. I really just have this up to the elemental resistance damage reduction whenever you take elemental resistance, because that's nice. You know, we could probably just drop this for more damage because we're really tanky. Either way works. If you find you need the damage reduction, especially early on in runs, you can get like one shot. So you can do it either way. But we're gonna be strong. This is Wrath 8 damage reduction. What does it look like at 10? Right, like LE resist hurts, or LE damage hurts right at the start, but we've got a lot of damage reduction. We can't evade, but 40%, 15% is not bad at all for Wrath 10. That's the build. Okay. So I mean, this is floor 1, Wrath 10. See, I've done 2 breaches. We're at 55,000 shield. It's just going to keep going up. And then eventually you can swap off it. You can kind of choose when you're comfortable. I mean, you're not going to get hit for like 200,000 even at a time at like the worst. So realistically, you don't have to get it that high before swapping off, but you don't really want to be, opening your inventory and putting on Nimble Warrior every 30 seconds, because then your shield gets done too low. So you just kind of, do it whenever you feel like it. It's not an enormous difference in damage, but it is better. More elemental damage and more crit strike damage, so it will be better. It just doesn't make that big of a difference. So if you get annoyed swapping, you don't have to swap, especially in just regular expeditions. But for the Forge, especially later on, it's nice to be able to clear things a little bit faster. You can also see, I guess I'll say, that you kind of want to stand like right on top of stuff, because that's when the most of the lightning rods will be hitting them at once. It gets really concentrated around your body. So if you're only hitting them with like one lightning rod at a time, that's not that much damage. The whole point is that you've got like 100 of them, and so they're all doing damage, and that's a huge multiplier on everything else. That is pretty unique to this build, that you could get that many instances of damage at once, especially for something that's like damage over tiny like this. And like now we're down to 5k shield, where is it? Put back on your Thornbite rune. Start building back up again, so that you don't die. Especially with elites around, they can do a good amount of damage. And if I wasn't out of mana, you can pull stuff together with your jump. You can cleanse your effects with your jump. It's a nice... They made it feel a lot better this update, and they made Whirlwind's cool down between casts way faster, so you can chain it in pretty easily, and works pretty well with the build. Makes it a lot of fun to play with. This isn't the strongest build in the game, but it's strong enough to do all the content, and it's a lot of fun to use because it's a lot of like positioning around, and you're always moving, and you're shooting out all these lightning rods. I just think it's a really cool build. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy it. If you try it out, let me know if it works or if it doesn't work, or if you have suggestions. I was looking to make stuff better.